Hello everyone, my name is Abresh and what is the agenda for today? What is the topic? Framework. So let's move further and let's have a little understanding of what is manual testing. First thing, what is manual testing? Manual testing is making a check, a thorough check of your application, manually entering the data and making it sure that it works as expected, it fulfills the requirements of the client or not, or is it as expected by the client or not. That is what we do in manual testing. So in manual testing you can see me sitting very tired because I am doing the same transactions again and again in a same sequence n number of times till I complete the transaction flow and till I get a real picture of the application as per the expectation of the client. So my task would be to load all the transactions, download those transactions, create pass and fail reports for each, and then validate whether the form was successful or not. If successful or if failure, take the screenshot and manage everything and make it available. Correct? That's why if you see, think over it and what if I have a lack of credentials to be tested on this particular form? Don't you feel it would be a boring task, a time consuming task, a tedious task? Now, ultimate results of being boring, tedious, and time consuming, the ultimate results into mistakes. Unknowingly, unwillingly, you start making mistakes or errors which you don't even have a thought of. So if I have to explain this into a better way, so let's consider there is a particular form that you have and there are certain entries, okay, to be done, and then a submit form has to be done. So I have this particular form which I have to fulfill, and I want to make sure that my form is able to do the task as per the expectation of my client. Correct? So for that, there are two ways to do the testing. Okay, testing can be done in two ways: manual, automation. Correct? Now if I do it with manual process with 1 lakh credentials, let's say I take 5 days to complete the task. The same thing with automation, I can do it in 1 day. Correct? That's because of the speed. So let's say I do the same task with automation, I can do it with 1 day. Now, what is the benefit of this? See, when we talk about 5 days, it's obvious that same thing I'm going to do a lot of time. Okay, so I have to do the same thing for the next 5 days, which is ultimately going to make sure that it is basically leading me towards doing the same thing again and again, which is monotonous, and repetitive task leads to unknowingly, unwillingly, you will make mistakes. Correct? Sometimes the form has to be filled up in this sequence, but I do random fill up manually, or sometimes while manual testing I may not follow the right sequence of the flow, or maybe I'll do it once like this and then this way, then this way and this way. So if I do this kind of manipulation of the process, I will lead it to wrong results. Why this is happening? Either because of boringness, tediousness. Correct? So boring and tediousness makes it to mistakes. Correct? And since it is going to take up 5 days, why there is a need of doing it through manual transactions? So that's the reason we need to prefer going ahead with manual transactions. So automation process. So when we talk about automation, you can see me very happy. Why? Because now I spend only few minutes, or I would say some time, to create the script, and then rest of the process is being taken care by the system. So my task, which I was doing manually with all the whole cycle, now my task is limited to this area only. And once I have done it, even if I have to check 1 lakh credentials, I do not need to sit in front of the system to make sure that it is working. I will get the result at the end of the day. Once the process gets completed, I can check the results, and based on that, I can perform the recheck of those things. Correct? So that's the beauty of automation. That's the reason automation testing has gained so much of popularity in the current market. Coming back to the automation testing, it is also important to do with automation testing because it saves a lot of time and efforts and money also. Because if you realized it, this particular 5 days of work, uh, I am actually paying for 5 days for doing a particular task, and here I'm just paying it for 1 day, which is, this is basically not 5 times I would consider, because a automation experts would get a better pay as compared to a manual tester. So obviously not 5 times, but at least twice or thrice the cost, right? So 2 or 3 times the cost that you pay for an automation expert, you will pay for a manual tester on a general understanding, basic level understanding, not on a very clear picture wherein a proper automation expert is hired. Okay, I'm just talking about a normal scenario, a fresher doing the task on manual testing and a fresher doing the automation testing, correct? Comparing two people. Now, moving ahead with this. Now, once you go ahead with automation testing, these are the things that comes into the picture. Fast execution, you can do the task faster because you're just running the script, and system can do much faster because the time of right click run, say, right click enter copy paste, right click enter copy paste, all those processes would involve lot of unwanted time wastage, which can be reduced with the help of automation. So automation can reduce your time by doing the task faster, more accurate because system does not do manipulation. It will not think that, okay, now I'm tired, I'll do from down to up, I'll fill up something randomly, whatever I feel I will do that accordingly. No, it doesn't work that way. System will always do top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom. Entries will be every time done in the same sequence. So that's why more accuracy will be there, because any deviation could lead you towards incorrect results. And it may be incorrect or it may be correct, but majorly it would be uh, not the right results, I would consider. Less investment, I've explained about that. Regression testing, that's what we were trying to understand. When we talk about automation testing, it's good for functional testing and regression testing. Why regression testing? Because in regression testing, most of the test cases would remain the same, the script remains the same with a little customization based on the new updation of the tool. So if your application has changed to 30% changes have been done on a page, then you need to customize those 30% only. The rest of the things are reusable. Reusability is also one of the things. Frequent execution. When I say frequent execution, the repetitive task, it's always good to have automation as a part of when it comes to repetitive task. Supports light out execution, something which you miss by a manual process, like the time it takes for execution. Sometimes the response time is less or more. So the response time of the application is fluctuating. Those things, all those things can be traced out with the help of automation. Even something which cannot be done by a manual tester can be done with automation tester, vice versa as well. So many things that you miss out through manual testing, you can trace it through automation testing. That's the beauty of automation testing. Okay, so on a simpler understanding, you might have gotten clarity why you should go with automation, when you should go with automation, and when you should go with manual testing, right? So when there is repetition, or you can say regression testing, regression and functional testing. Okay, so instead of repetition, let's say regression testing. Okay, so regression testing and functional testing can be when you have to do such kind of testing, it is recommended to go with automation using Selenium. Now we'll talk about Selenium in a little later part. Manual testing is to be done when it is more about the look and feel of the app or the application, whatever you call it. Manual testing is more when you have to do it for once or twice execution. For example, look and feel, I mean to say, is basically, let's say, the color code, the logo placement of the logo, the UI looks good or not, all those things. Whether the UI works, whether the functioning part of the application works or not, whether if I click on a button, whether it allows me to click or not, those are the functional part of it. Okay, so little difference in this. Look and feel, even you can do it with automation, but that's not something which we prefer. In reality, most of the time we prefer going with manual testing when we talk about the logo, the look and feel, the UI, the user interface, but at a basic level. When there is a repetition of anything, it is always good to go with automation. Okay, so that's a little gist of automation versus manual testing. Now we'll go ahead a little deeper. What is Selenium? Now you might have a question, what is Selenium? Selenium is an automation tool. Abresh, we know that. Okay, I do agree that you know it, because that is something which is a base to this discussion. But why Selenium? Why there is a need of Selenium? Basically, Selenium is an only tool available. I won't say only, sorry for that, but it is one of the tool available in the market, which is one of the most popular product in the market. And why it is popular? Because first thing, it is available for free. It allows you to it allows you to use any programming language, either it be a Java, .NET, Java, Python, C Sharp, PHP, Ruby, Perl, JavaScript, any language that you love or you are an expert of, you can use that language to write your script. You just need binding libraries. Okay, binding libraries you need to perform the task with smoothness. Another important aspect of Selenium is it does not constrains you from using any particular operating system that you like. Sometimes it happens I am more comfortable, like if you talk about me, I'm more comfortable with Windows. I'm not very comfortable with Mac. So I would prefer, my preference would be towards Windows based applications, right? So this tool does not have any kind of limitations wherein you cannot use over here, there and stuff, right? So this is another added advantage. Another thing is, you may be how would you judge which user of your product? So who is your end user? You don't know. Who, even if you know who is your end user, you cannot judge which of these browsers he is going to use, right? So you have to make sure that your application works on IE also, Firefox also, Chrome also, Safari also, Opera also, because you may have an Opera user who use it Opera for some features. You may have a Mac system user who will love to work with Safari. That's a preferred way. You may have a Windows machine where you may have a user who is using a Windows machine who would love to work with Chrome or Firefox, or somebody at an aged level who has been not using very recently, he's not using your application or any browsers. He is more fond of IE because that point of time people were comfortable with IE. So it's all about preferences. But what Selenium does is it does not obstruct you from using your preferences. So preferable language, preferable operating system, preferable browser, or most probably all the browsers you can test with Selenium. Another positive point of Selenium is it works with community, open source community support. Okay, so what does that mean? What is an open source community? Basically, when we talk about any particular tool which is available for free, that doesn't mean it is a open source tool. Okay, there's a difference between an open source tool and a free tool. When we talk about free tool, it may be um, there are two things. Okay, let me explain you this way. So there are two types of process. One is open source. Okay, and the other one is freeware. I don't know how many of you are aware of. So open source means where anyone can access your source code, can contribute. So access to source code and contribution. Contribution to what? Contribution to the for the improvement of the application. Whereas a freeware tool may or may not allow you to do contribution. So in this case, usually you can understand it this way, that freeware tool is a kind of tool which a free tool can be a tool which is an open source, or it's a tool which is designed by a group of people, but it does not allow say that the source code will be available all to all in a general. Okay, so that is the main difference about it. Moving ahead with this, now you got an understanding that it is available for free. It is easy to install. It is supporting multiple programming languages and multiple operating systems, multiple browser. Another advantage that I am going to discuss about it is, so basically I was talking about the advantages itself. So if we talk about the advantages, we've discussed about this. Now, another two types of advantages, the biggest advantage that we have with Selenium is it can work with parallel execution. So you can run 2, 3, 4 test cases on different single test case on different browsers at the same time. That's the beauty of Selenium, which also saves your time, and time is money. Correct. It also supports frameworks. Now over here you will get confused that here the word framework, instead of saying that framework, it's a tool kind of framework, wherein TestNG, JUnit and NUnit are those kind of framework which are acting as a wrapper to this particular chocolate of Selenium, right? So they help you to enhance the script writing techniques, and it supports a lot of features. So TestNG is one of the latest product that we use in industry, and it's very much used in the industry, and it's very easy to do the task with TestNG. Now, I have given you a lot of positive points. Why only positive points? Let's discuss about the negative part of it. It supports only web application. Now, as I said, Selenium only supports web-based applications. So anything that you can access through a web browser, you can automate that particular application through Selenium. Got it? Now, if you can if you can automate any application that you can access on a web browser, that is itself a sufficient thing. Why I would say is because if you talk about any company, most of the companies, they are relying on their web-based application rather than a desktop-based. Nowadays, desktop-based applications are usually those applications, very less applications we have in the market, like Microsoft Office. Even they are moving towards an online platform. So most of the application goes towards web-based, and that's why even though it is a disadvantage, I would consider it to be an advantage because it can do wonders with the web-based application. It can do any type of, you can automate any kind of feature of a web-based application. That's the beauty of Selenium. Because that is happening because of open source community, because there are too many experts for Selenium contribution, and that's the reason we are getting so many features accessible through automation using Selenium tool. Another part of disadvantage is it can only work with community setup support, so you do not have anybody to talk to indirectly, or you may have to rely on somebody whom you don't know, and you have to rely on the situation whether you put up today, you put up the question, you may not get the surety that your answer will be given by 1 minute, in the next 1 minute, or in the next 10 days also. You never know that. So you have to rely on when somebody will notice your question, and if he notices after that, if he knows the answer, he will be able to answer it. Otherwise, you will have to wait for another chance. So this is how it will work, correct? So community support is a little tricky part wherein you have to wait for some time, but usually if you talk about on a general scenario, mostly it is done on a little faster basis. Not very much time is taken because of the huge community that we have with Selenium. Difficult to set up and use. Sometimes it becomes difficult because of the configurational issues. That's the only problem that we have with Selenium, configurational problems. And when you automate a particular browser, you have to make sure that you have the right type of file that you need to run that particular version of the browser. So that is a little typical part wherein you may face difficulties in doing the setup. Another thing is there is no reporting facility. You cannot put a report, you cannot have any kind of report generation with this Selenium as a direct tool. You have to use TestNG for that. TestNG can give you results. Limited support for image based testing. Yes, I do agree with that, because there is an auto IT, there is a securely tool called a securely tool. Basically, that is the tool which we use to automate the image based testing. So we can match the image and we can pass the input image, actual image. You can pass expected image and match it with the actual image, and then the tool gives you the result. So that particular process is limited. Okay, so you have limitations, you have got the understanding on what is the disadvantages, what are the advantages, and why you should go for Selenium. So we'll go a little idea with where Selenium is good, where it is not good as compared to IBM RFT and QTP, which is the competitors in the market. These are the competitors that we have in the market for Selenium. So first thing comes the license part. So when we talk about the license part, QTP costs you around 1 lakh rupee per user, somewhere in the range of that. And IBM RFT, I'm not pretty sure about the commercial part, but yes, it is again one of the costly product. So both the product, you need to take a license copy, whereas in Selenium, you do not need that. Another part is the cost. Huge cost is required in both the tools, but Selenium, you don't need anything. Actually, you don't need anything, but unless and until you need any kind of paid tool to be supported with Selenium, then only you will need it. Otherwise, you don't need them, right? So apart from this, if we talk about customer support, here you get benefit of being using QTP and IBM RFT. Because you have paid such high cost, you get premium support, a dedicated support team who answers your query. And here you have to rely on the response of the community. So that's a little problem part. Hardware wise, again here Selenium is best because it does not require a huge configuration. You don't need a very high-end configuration or machine. You can work with a normal machine. You can still work without any difficulties. It might just perform little slower. That's only thing that will happen. If you have a very old system, it will perform slow. That's it. Otherwise it will not restrict you. Whereas in IBM QTP and IBM RFT, you cannot run the application unless and until you have a minimum configuration matching, that too with a very high end configuration required. Then we talk about coding experience. When we talk about coding experience, here the problem is Selenium. With Selenium you have a problem, and that is not very difficult. I would say the problem is not too difficult to handle, but it requires you to have a good understanding, a good hands-on experience or good control on your technical skills. And that I mean to say that technical skills I mean to say is your language expertise. Java, Python, whichever language you're using, you should be having good hold on the particular language. Then it would add up ease to your process. Another thing that we have is environment support. You can work with Windows machine. If you have a Windows machine, you can work with QTP and IBM RFT, but you cannot work with Mac machine or Linux or any other operating system for IBM and QTP. So with Selenium, you get benefit. Same with Java also, same with languages also. You have variety of language support, right? So that's a little idea about how you can work with Selenium. So this was the basic part of Selenium that we have gone through. Basically, what is a framework? A framework can be defined as a set of guidelines which, when followed, produces beneficial results. That's the simplest understanding of a framework. Now, when I say framework, you cannot just say that the framework is just a guideline. See, when we talk about a structure, if you talk about anything, either you talk about a building, if you are building something, if you're creating a house, if you're developing a house, what is the basic things that you follow? Right amount of cement, or right amount of ingredients, or let's take a dish that you cook, right? So for example, you're cooking something and you have to follow certain guidelines that salt has to be put up this much, when it has to be added, how much chili powder you should be adding, all these things, right? All these makes it to be a good product altogether. Same applies over here with automation framework also. So first thing, I'll be explaining you about framework. I'm not going to use always the particular what we call it as your presentations, but I'm going to use my own ways to do that. So in a very simple language, we can say that a framework is a blend of guidelines, various guidelines. So you follow certain guidelines to complete a particular thing. You do how it has to be done, it has to be guided accordingly. Then you follow coding standards. I'm talking about test automation framework. Now we are going deeper into that. So coding standards. Then you have to know the concepts, like how testing is done, what is type of testing, what is Selenium, how Selenium scripts are written, that you follow in coding standards. Guidelines are what is the right way of starting with Selenium scripting, or what is the right way of doing a particular, like opening up the browser, there are certain guidelines to it. you have to follow those guidelines, and you have to follow the coding standards, that you have to do this way, or you have to call the driver to run a particular script, and so on. So certain things are there which are set accordingly. If you do it, you will be able to do it properly. What are the right practices? I mean to say is, when you call a browser, there is a process, there is a practice that you call it by open up the browser. But then when you call a website, or you're trying to open up a URL, you always call it as driver.get URL, or the object.get URL, right? So there are certain set practices that you follow. You don't say that driver dot navigate dot to a particular URL. Why you don't use it in the initial level? That is having a guideline. So that there are certain practices that we follow. We call web driver at a global level. We declare the drivers at a global level. So that is something which is very important. So what are the general practices that is to be followed? You have to know those things. Then project hierarchy. What should be the folder structure? Project hierarchy is very important. What kind of project structure? Are you following a module-wise project? Are you creating a module-wise project? Are you going with feature-wise? So modularity is also very important. Now, when I say project hierarchy or modularity, I mean to say by this. So I'll take you through a little idea about this. So if you can see, I have this is a data for my one of my batches, old batches. So if you can see, I have divided each modules into pieces, correct? So you can see all the whole package is divided into modules, so that whatever things are required, I can easily find out over there, and it is segregated in the right process. So modularity is very important. Hierarchy of the project, I should start from where, I should end it where, what kind of page should be tested first. You cannot test a login process before logout process before testing the login, right? So a hierarchy of flow of the application should also taken into consideration for defining the hierarchy for your scripting. Modularity and project hierarchy is a major need and very important in a big project. Small projects, it's fine. Then reporting mechanism. Are you going to use any third-party tool, or you're going to use TestNG, or you are just going to rely on your print statements to get your reports? What is the technique that you're implementing is also important, because when you have a big project, when you talk about a complete framework, frameworks are for a project. When you talk about a big size project, it is always beneficial to have a right techniques to take the reporting. If you do not follow a right technique to reports, you will end up in getting huge chunk of reports also, which is again a task for you to analyze and understand and create another report which you can share with somebody. So your reports should be assigned or designed in such a way, either you're using TestNG or some other thing, but it has to be in a way that you can display, or you can share, or somebody else apart from you should be able to read it. That's the beauty of framework. Test data, the last point that I would say is test data injection. When we say test data injection, what does that mean? See, you cannot just be biased with the project that you just tested with one or two set of inputs, and you just checked with one or two credentials and you declared it that the application is working fine. You cannot do that. So the most important thing is what kind of data you are giving, you are passing to the application, so that the application can be tested properly and you can get a proper results out of it. So when we talk about a framework, the most important thing I feel is What are the various guidelines that are to be considered? What are the actual coding standards that you should follow and is being followed in the industry? What are the right concepts when you should go for drag and drop feature, or when you should use an actions class or this particular class or that particular class, which class should be used, which feature you should be using? Very important. That's very important. Then what kind of process you should follow? I should be able to open up the application, then do this, then do that, then do that, and so on, right? It should be in a right process. The process of writing the script is also important. The process of execution is important. The process of creating a report is important. A lot of places will cover up in process. Then what is the right practice? When we use TestNG, it is a right practice to always have WebDriver outside the annotations. Now you'll say, what are these annotations? We'll come up with those things. See, there are a lot of things that I'll talk about right now. You'll feel that it's not coming up into your mind because of the reason you have some people are from no knowledge at all, and they have joined into this particular webinar, which is designed in such a way that somebody who knows it should be easy to understand this particular concept of framework stuff. Framework is an advanced level of Selenium. So we are not talking about the basics of Selenium, we're talking about the advanced part. So some things you'll not be able to get it. For timing, just listen, focus, try to understand it to some extent. That is more than enough. That solves the purpose. Then project hierarchy helps you to understand what is the right technique, where I should place which file or which automation part. Like for example, I have to wait for a page to load. So I should have a project. Let's say I'm going to automate, I'm working with the e-commerce website. So when I go for payment process, I should have a payment process folder wherein all my test cases related to payment are being placed, so that I have a segregated area. So whenever if somebody asks me about where is this particular file, I should be able to track it. Or if I see any errors during the results in the error, I should be able to track it. Where is the problem? Where I should find that solution to the problem, or where is the problem I should find out. All these things makes it easy with modularity and project hierarchy. Then comes the reporting mechanism, as I told you, very important part. Then test data injection, which is again another important part. Now, with all these things, a constructive blend of all these things adds pillar to your automation testing. So we are not discussing about the scripting part. We are discussing about what you should consider while creating a framework. Now, when we talk about framework, see, framework is same as you see a building with no walls, right? That's framework, correct? Same way over here, test automation framework is considered when you see all these things are considered while creating the things, then that becomes a framework. Now, very important aspect of framework I will put forward is every company have their own framework. A customized framework is used in every organization in reality. So whatever framework is used in one company may not be the same in the other company, or it may be. I'm not talking about the type of framework, but the way the way all these points are being worked out or processed about will differ based on the project, based on the requirement. Okay. Now, what is the need of this Selenium framework? Why do we need this framework? To find out and fix a bug in a million line code is insanely challenging. Now, to make it simple, when you have large chunk of data, okay, you have created a huge chunk of script, and then if you want to understand, if you want to find out a problem, or you want to customize something, or there is a change in something, framework helps you to go ahead with smooth and easy process. It helps you to solve your purpose with ease. Automation, simplicity, and efficiency makes a tester's life easy. We say this. Why we say this? Because when we talk about framework, it makes your code reusable. The benefits that we have with framework is the reusability, code reusability. Then we have improved code readability. Now, when I say improved code readability, what do you mean by this, Abresh? Basically, see, something you have written. For example, if you remember the script that I talked about in the first part, initial slides, I told you about 1 lakh credential part, wherein I'll write only one script. The same script will always help me to run all the 1 lakh test data on that particular application with the same script. So this is the benefit of framework. So you can work with framework over there. So increased code reusage. So a lot of part you can reuse that. Improves code readability because it is into a very structured format. You can read it much easily. You can understand where I have to find or customize. If there is any change in the application, you will be able to find out where to go and check it and do the changes necessary. All these things are possible with a framework. Then higher portability, convenience. With framework, you can easily manage the change that has implemented, and that change will not impact the whole set of things. That's the reason framework helps you to do those changes or implement some small amount of changes with ease. It also helps you to reduce the script maintenance. Now, when I say script maintenance, see, if you have a sorted things, isn't it going to be very simple to resolve it? Because you know that, okay, if I have to change any location, if I have to tell the path, let's say my particular file, a text file is there, which I have given this particular file path at 5 in 5 script. I know where I have to make the changes, correct? I know where all places I have made the changes. If I use the code readability or reusability concept in a right way, I may not even have to do that in 5 different places. I will do it only one place, and I will make sure that it impacts the all 5 other places where it is referred as. So it's kind of reference kind of process. Okay, so you refer a particular reusability part from one location, so that if you want to change something, your change is not going to be a tedious task for it. So in case of changes, it's very easy to change, easy to manage the maintenance of the code. That's the reason framework is required. Selenium framework is a code structure to make code maintenance simpler and code readability better. So what type of frameworks do we have in the industry? Firstly, we have a lot of framework. Trust me, there are a lot of frameworks available in the market. In general, 90% of the people will talk about data-driven framework, which is the basic framework which is used in almost every situation. Everyone uses it to the most feasible situations. So they will always rely on data-driven framework. Keyword-driven framework is another type of framework wherein it's a enhanced version or a little customized version of data-driven. Now, what is data-driven and what is keyword-driven? We'll discuss that also. And the third one is the hybrid framework, which is usually being considered to be, you should be knowing all these things initially if you are a fresher or you're new to the concept. Okay, so a fresher of test automation using Selenium would be expected to know about data driven, keyword driven, and hybrid driven framework. So let's understand a little bit of data driven framework first. Now, when I say data driven, with the name itself, you can understand, correct? Data driven is a testing strategy in which the data set means the content, the input data under the test is stored separately from the test script. So data driven framework is a combination of data set plus the test script. code and data stored separately. Automation testing is driven by data set under the test, and same test script will work for different data set. For example, login credentials stored in an Excel and password is stored parameter to the code. So I'll give you a little idea about this particular concept. Okay, so what happens in the real scenario? Let's say you have this particular application. Here is your username, here is your password, and here is your login button. Okay, let's make it round. So this is your login button. Right now, your aim is to check 1 lakh credentials on this particular username password and give a report of pass or fail. Correct? How many credentials pass, how many test case pass, how many test case fail. Now the task can be done with automation, but for that you will have few things to be taken into consideration. Let's understand them a little bit. For example, the process would be you will write a script, okay, which will perform the step of entering the data into this text box, entering the data into this text box and clicking on submit button, and then it will pass, it will create a, it will capture the result and it will put it into a result output. So it will generate a report. Now, this is one part. Another part is how will the entry of these data come? So this entry of data, the data comes through this Excel sheet that you have. Okay, so this is your Excel sheet wherein huge set of data is being given to you, wherein each field have a particular set of data available into it, and you are supposed to take this input values from here to a script and then pass it to the respective location. That's called data driven testing, a testing that is driven by data. I'm just giving you a simplest understanding of it. So this is the most important aspect. This is the base of it. So the question is, can Selenium WebDriver read data from an Excel file for input? The answer is no. Selenium WebDriver does not have a read-write functionality, so it always rely on third-party tools. And if you talk about third-party tools, you always get to see users are using Apache POI. Apache POI is a kind of API, again, same as Selenium API. You have Apache POI, which can read data from an Excel file. It can read data from an Excel file, Word file, PPT file, and many other. But let's focus on the Excel file. So you can use Apache POI to read data from both the file. This is the latest file format of Excel and this is the old file format of Excel. So it can help you to read the data, fetch the data from an Excel file, because Apache POI has the functionality which helps you to read the data from an Excel file and bring it to your script as an input. So this is done through the usage of Apache POI. Apache POI is basically a tool, a API which is designed to read and write on any Microsoft Office or any Office tools. Okay, usually Microsoft Office. Now, integration of Selenium WebDriver with Apache POI. I'm not going to discuss about that from here. So this thing I will show you into one of my script. So let's go to that. So you can see over here, you can just ignore all the other modules. Just focus on module number 9. So if you can see, I have module 9.packages. Let me take you to this location to give you a little better easy understanding. Okay, so you can see this is my project. Okay, consider module 9 is my project. Now this module 9 or this project have 4 packages wherein I have segregated the project into pieces. I have all my pages. So I'm using the concept of page object model, which we learn in the real scenarios. So here I am putting up this form page, which is basically a page in one of my blog page. So I'll take you there a little later. So basically all the UI elements are stored in my page dot java file. Okay, so but a form page dot java file holds all my UI elements, like first name, this is my locator, last name, this is my locator, address, this is my locator, and the task that it will do, it will clear the field, fill up the data, clear the field, fill up the data, clear the field, fill up the data, and start so on, right? So this way you will see that a form has been designed, and that particular form, so I'll try to take you to that form page also. Selenium automation practice.blogspot.com. So basically this is my URL, my own URL, wherein I've tried collecting some. I'm not a developer of I'm not a web developer, so I have just fetch up those resources from various places and I've gathered it over here. And basically this gives you an idea about some of the features. So I'll just take up this thing. So you can see this particular form, you can enter the data, first name, last name, and address, first name, last name, address. So this is basically a way of filling up the data. So if I have to fill up this particular data, I need the locator of this particular data. So you can see name is equals to ts underscore name, and you can see those data being used over here. Okay, so this is a page object model example. Page object model is basically a technique to design your script in a better way, to have a clear picture of what is being used and how it has been working, right? So page object model that we have seen right now, let me take you back to this. So all my pages, if it is home page, about us page, contact us page, so each and every page I will segregate them into pages. So all this all the source code, all the locators, all the UI part of the application, I'll store it into this particular section. Then all my test cases will reside into my test cases location, wherein you can see but this particular data driven testing, wherein you can see I am opening up the browser, I'm opening up the application under test, I'm filling up the form and fetching the data from an Excel file, and then that particular data is being passed to the application which is under test, and then it will close the particular browser. Okay, so this is how the script is written. I'll show you what all we have. So we'll go ahead with that from here. So this is what the same script I'm talking about. So this is the same thing here. The look and feel would be much convenient for you. So this is what we have talked about. Here you can declare global level declaration of various things. I'm not going to go very deep into it because it's not a session wherein we can cover whole thing. It is a very short description of how we can take up this particular thing. So moving on to the data driven part, what I'm doing over here is this part of the script is helping me to open up the browser. So I'm opening up the browser and opening up the URL which will open up the application which is under test. Then I want to test that application. So I have this at test annotation wherein the the process has been defined. This is defining the process that I have to go to first name first and enter the data, second name, enter the data, third name, that is address, enter the data, whatever has been given as an input. So this at test annotation is helping me to perform the task, means the action part. Then after that, where is the data coming from? So I have used the data provider annotation over here, wherein this data provider annotation is helping me to pass the data that you get to your at test annotation. So there is a link between data provider and the test at test annotation, and that is the name of the method. Another thing about this data provider, what does this data provider do? It reads the data from this particular Excel file that is in this particular location. So it reads the data, then you use Apache POI over here. Okay, so this particular command helps you to open up or define where is your file. So you're telling your system this is the particular file that I'm talking about. Then you open up the workbook, then you open up the sheet, then you read how many number of files you have, how many number of rows you have, how many number of columns you have, and then you run a loop to pass the data into a sequence and read a particular cell inside an Excel file. Okay, once you read that particular Excel file, you get a value into that particular cell. Let's say that particular cell has a value as Amit. So that word Amit will be given to data provider. Then data provider will pass that input to this particular attest annotation, wherein the first set, that is first name, will get the input. Then again the same thing applies, the same round circle will go ahead and you will get another value that will be placed into last name. Third value will be placed into address and it will perform that task, and then it will come back to the system. Again it will ask for 3 inputs. So every time we are passing only one input, but system, because of these string values, it is waiting for 3 inputs to come and then it will execute the task. Okay, and in reality it is happening that way, but on the back end it works. It will get the value first name, it will enter, it will perform the action. Again it will fetch the another value, it will enter, it will perform the action. Okay, so that is how it will work in reality. So this way you can read the data and pass on the data using Excel. In data driven, you pass the data directly. In keyword driven, you define a keyword to read. So you read the keyword, based on that you perform the action. So keyword driven framework is a strategy in which the method to be tested is stored into an Excel file. So you run through a method, you define this particular method. So open browser would be one method, close browser would be one method, this way. Okay, so in keyword driven framework, automation testing is driven by the file containing the method names to be tested. The main script will work for executing the method mentioned in the file. I'll give you a little idea of that sample also. So you can see I have this thing. I'll just quickly take you through. Okay, so this is basically my input. I have 3 action keywords. One will open up the browser, one will navigate, and one will click on a Gmail account. So once this input is available into an Excel file, now my script will read this input, and then what is the input for each value, I have created a separate method, and this particular method will perform the task. So my open browser will go to this and perform the opening of the browser. My navigate, when I read the data from an Excel file, being the data would be navigate. So if I go to this cell and if I read the data as navigate, I will be navigated towards this particular method and it will perform the task of opening up the google.com. This way it has been done. In the test cases, you will say if this is a if and else condition works over here. So whatever task is being done is basically done through a particular data that is available into an Excel sheet. So your actions, that is the method names, are important. So your action keywords act as a method name also. In the script, they become the method names and they navigate towards what is the task that you want to do with this particular method name. Okay, so this way the flow of execution works with keyword driven framework. When we talk about the third part, Okay, so you can see that in this particular screenshot also. Open the browser, navigate. So you have either it is navigate. So if it is navigate, it will navigate to a browser. Sorry, navigate to a URL. Then it will go to this. So whatever reading happens based on that, that particular method will get triggered. Okay, so that's how keyword driven framework works. In terms of hybrid driven framework, generally that's a wrong notion that a hybrid framework is always a keyword driven and a data driven, but that's usually taken into consideration in normal scenario. Data driven and keyword driven, a combination of both makes it to become a hybrid framework. When you use both, it is hybrid framework. Okay, so that's a little idea on what is a framework, what type of framework do we have, and what you can do with the help of those framework. So I am done from my side. So thank you so much, guys. Have a great life ahead. Best of luck for your career. Bye bye.